Hi, I'm here today to talk about Chapter 6 on listening, and I'm going to share with you all the great, exciting things that listening brings. So, there's a difference between hearing because you can't avoid it. You hear sounds in the background, you hear people yelling, you hear music, and it just happens. But listening is something that you do intentionally, and you'll key in on a certain sound and zero in on what it is, who it is speaking, whose voice it is, who the artist is of the music you're listening to. When you hear that, you interpret it. You hear that sound of that voice and you interpret it, you match it up to something you've heard before, and you know what's going on. Couple of components of listening that happens. The affect component is your attitude. If you have a bad attitude, you're not going to listen as well. That's pretty obvious. So cognitively, whenever you listen, you select what you want to listen to. If you're in a crowd of people and you're listening to your friend talk, if you hear something in the background that distracts you, you're going to automatically select that to listen to it, to see if it's something you want to concentrate on or figure out what it is. Then you're going to bring your attending or your attention back to your friend and continue talking to them so that you understand both sounds. But you cannot multitask. There can only be one thought in your brain at a time. That thought may be fleeting. You think about, what that sound was over there and bring it straight back, but only one at a time. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. Once you listen and you identify and understand and put your attention on that, there's something regarding remembering and then responding. There's a lot more to remembering than the words they said. It's the context. We talk about nonverbals in the last lecture about the pitch and the rate and the speed of their voice and things like that. You need to remember everything you've heard that goes into that message before you respond. And especially you need to remember what they said beforehand. If you zone out during a conversation, then come back in, well then you're going to lose something. You're going to lose that context. You're going to be there. So a couple different kind of listenings that you'll want to know. It's going to make it easier on the test when you do that. The first thing is active listening. Participating in what's going on, selecting what you want to listen to. Yes, there's distractions, which there always is. Sometimes the distractions are around you, the surroundings. Sometimes those distractions are physical. You could be hungry or hangry, as my daughter calls it, hungry and angry at the same time. You may have a cold or a flu coming on, or just have a headache because you've been listening to somebody's voice too long. So you're always going to have those distractions, but you have to actively select what you want to listen to. Sometimes you get people this passive listening where they're going to say and just nod and grunt at the right time so you keep going. But they are not, or when you're doing it, you're not really listening intently where you're going to hear what they say. You're going to hear words only. When we do that, listen in fidelity, we're going to match those messages to what they're saying. We're going to understand what the deeper lines are. Matching it with who's saying it and how they're saying it, especially according to the memories we have of them. A couple different ways to listen. Some people listen just to build their relationships. We talked about the way men and women act beforehand and how women have a more of an emotional need and they listen emotionally, where men just kind of grunt and nod because they're going to think things through and they're more analytical. So when people-oriented listeners listen, they're talking about key words and they're listening or hearing the emotional response in the people's voices, and cluing in on certain words about mad, angry, I felt, I, we, you, and that way they're identifying different people and how those things go together. Task-oriented is like, men, give me a list. What do I have to do? A, B, C, D. Write it down. Let me see. Let me listen. Let me comprehend completely what's going on. A lot of people, when I'm lecturing in classrooms, are content, and they only want to hear exactly what they need to hear. If I say something like this will be on the test, that's a content or something they hear that they really pay attention to. Or if I say this list is important, that's something, the content they want to hear about. Or if I say the next subject is, then they're writing an outline style. So they're listening to certain things. Sometimes whenever somebody's talking to you, all you want to do is hear a yes or it's okay. And they're going to give their explanation, yada, 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 but it's okay. And that's all you wanted to hear was the okay, not all the explanations or the reasons why. It's either yes or no. I don't want to hear your crap. and we've all been there before. So I've had the time-oriented listeners. I've had supervisors before where they'll ask me a question. I'll just tell them, they said, I really like that I don't have to hear all the reasonings and logic. I'm busy, you're busy. Just give me that straight up. Time-oriented listeners. I really don't want to hear it. Just ask me a question and I'll answer. A lot of times that's why text messaging is so good. I know text messaging and listening don't go together, but you get a straight question, you get a straight answer, and there's none of that, don't waste my time. Why you should listen well. When you do listen, you're active listening, it's going to help you at your job. They tell you a task to do or something, an assignment, and you say, I understand that you want me to, and you repeat it back to them. They know you were listening well, and you know that you have accountability of what's going on, and everything's cool. Listening to what I need when I go to the store to help my mom is going to save me my time. I don't have to go back, and money, of course, and gas money, things like that. When you listen well, it creates opportunities. Just like when you have somebody having a conversation. I was there a week or two ago, and they talked about a job opening. And I said, that sounds interesting. Just because I listened of what, I wasn't eavesdropping, but listened closely what people were talking about to see if that job was for me and things like that. When I want to listen to somebody, I always turn my head towards who's talking. And I'll usually turn my body also just to show them that I'm interested in what they're saying and they get my complete attention. That strengthens the relationship. You're not going to keep playing video games or keep lecturing and say, The more you listen and the more they know you're listening, the more important they are to you and they'll know it. Sometimes we're just trying to comprehend when we're listening, understand the message. We'll do that by responding appropriately and asking questions so they know we're listening well and we're going to be more clued in on it. The distractions around us, the other sounds, activities around us, and our own internal sounds, if we're hungry or hangry, aren't going to pay as much attention because we're really comprehending. No, we're really concentrating on the listening thing. Sometimes we get into critical listening or critical thinking. And it says here about determine key points, focus energies, but decoding nonverbal clues is great because we talked about verbal or nonverbal, we believe more than we believe verbal, but we look to see if the person has credibility, if they're lying. This happens with some of our close relationships when they're trying to BS us. We look to see if that's really true what they're saying or they're just trying to talk out their butt, right? This happens also with professors or different adults when they're trying to adult. What's going on? Because a lot of people just blow smoke, and you're critical or you're evaluating what they're listening to. You're evaluating with what you've heard them say before. Remember the remembering prompt we talked about. This also happens in class a lot when you're listening to understand a message like we just talked about and being critical about it to see, is this something, am I determining that this is something I'm going to have to remember and use in the future? My daughter's an empath. She understands and she feels people's emotions and she connects with them and she reflects that back to them. And she's really good at it. She's very caring and children love her because she's able to do it so well. And right now she's working as a waitress, and as she serves these people, she makes quick connections. As you listen closely and you're a good enough listener that you can feel the emotions, and you listen to nonverbals and their voice and the fluctuations in their voice, you're able to make that connection. It's really a talent that people have. We can develop the skill, but those that have the talent that develop it, it's really special. Empathetic listening. We all have appreciative listening where we hear the sound of our own name. I ask people a lot, what's your favorite sound in the world? One of the neatest one I've ever heard was Netflix. When Netflix started and it says boom, they know that they're about to sit down and relax and not have nothing to worry about and just veg. But science says the most favorite sound that anybody has is the sound of their own name. It's personal, it's making a connection. Of course, when somebody's yelling at you your name, it doesn't have the same impact, but the sound of your own name. We take pleasure in listening to the music we like. Sometimes we want no music and we just want silence, and we take pleasure, or we appreciate that. So appreciative listening. We've already talked about some of the things that stop us from listening well. So let's go through the list that they have. Environmental factors. If you're at a concert and you want to hear somebody's opinion or talk to somebody and it's real loud, it isn't going to happen. When it's hot outside, you're going to be grumpy. It's not going to happen. Visual distractions. We've all been in a crowd and we're talking to somebody and somebody cute walks by and either they or us are distracted. You're not listening anymore. Get in trouble. Large groups, when there's other people talking and you're trying to be selective of who you want to listen to and what's going on while you're listening to who you want to talk to, but you need to know what's going on around you just in case it's hard to listen. Sometimes we just get deaf. The older I'm getting, the harder it is for me to hear certain pitches and certain sounds. I say it's high-pitched sounds from my wife screaming all the time, but she doesn't think that's funny, or she did, and we're not together anymore. But she didn't think that was funny. Sometimes we just having a bad day, and we have a cold or something like that, medical issues. So we do have physical challenges that happen. I mentioned we were going to talk about multitasking before. It just doesn't work. And a lot of people will tell you I could do 2 or 3 things at once, but I'll tell you that you do one thing good with 100% of your energy, or you do 2 things at once and you do them with 40% of your energy, not 50, because you can't keep concentrating on 2. You do 3 things at once with 25% of your energy. The more you multitask, the less effort you can put into it. And we're trying to listen to 2 conversations at once. It just doesn't work. You're going to lose key components like the emotion behind it, the eye contact when people are trying to show you that this is really important. We've all gotten bored. Hopefully you're not bored right now with what I'm talking about. And when that happens, well, then we don't listen as well. Or you're overexcited. You're excited about what you want to say, so you're not listening to them. You're just waiting for them to breathe or shut up so you can tell them what you want to say. You're too excited. You've probably heard the saying before that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. You should listen twice as much as you talk. But some people just get diarrhea of the mouth and they never they never stop talking. They think that's more important. Sometimes we're just lazy. We're tired and we don't listen very well. Sometimes apprehension, you don't want to hear what they're about to say. You've heard the term before. Hopefully you haven't, but we need to talk. You're apprehensive and you really don't want to hear what they say, and you're not going to listen that close because you got that doom and gloom in your head. Sometimes when we're listening to somebody, like we need to talk, all you're listening for is certain words or certain phrases. And as soon as that happens, you hear that and then you react. You're kind of on the edge, apprehensive listening. And then as soon as they see things like break up or you're a punk, that's what you're listening for. As soon as you hear those things, that's when you get defensive. Or one of your friends say, we need to talk. And you know that they want to talk about the relationship you have with somebody else. And you're just listening for negative words or certain phrases. And you're selectively listening, which isn't cool. It's unethical, because you should listen to the reasons behind it and the content, not just certain words. We get defensive when we have to listen to these things. And in our minds, we're not listening. We're forming up our replies. We're justifying our actions, and we're thinking about what we're going to say, not what they're saying. And of course, emotional content. When you're listening for the emotions behind it, you're going to have better comprehension. If all you're hearing is the words, you're only listening with one ear. You're not really giving a break. So some of the things we just talked about is monopolistic, attacking, and ambushing. If you're waiting for just somebody to take a breath and then you start talking, and we always have those friends that are one-uppers or toppers. They always want to have something else to say. They just wait for you to take a breath so they can start talking and talk about themselves. Attacking, you know that whenever you're trying to explain something to somebody and all they want to do is beat you down, or their idea is better. Yeah, I'm sure you know people like that. And pseudo-listening. How many times have you been talking to somebody on the phone and you can set the phone down and come back 30 seconds or a minute later and they're still talking and you're saying, and set it down again and pick it back up and they're saying, That happens in public too, or face-to-face too. Some people just keep going on and you just keep nodding and dreaming, when is this going to be over? I really got something else, anything else I'd rather be doing. And we're doing nothing but pseudo listening. Significant relationships, when we care, we engage more and we listen better, which is pretty obvious. Different situations, we listen better. And when we have kids that are sleeping and we hear a little sound, we start listening really close to see what that sound is and what it means. When we're at work and two people are talking and you really want to butt in on that conversation, you start listening closer. Different situations, we need to listen closer. Culturally, when I was with my wife, who was Hispanic, and we were at her house, I had to listen a lot more attentively because they talk really fast. And I only knew a few words in Spanish, so I had to listen really close because of that. Some cultures do listen close because they're very collective. They want to join together. Where others, like here in America, we're rugged individualists and it's all about me. You don't listen to other people as close because you're worried about you and what you feel and what you think. When you're talking technology like the phone, like on the phone, it's harder to listen because you're not as engaged. You can't hear with your eyes what they're saying. You can't get that richness and that depth of conversation. So technology really cuts down on the listening. That's basically it. Quick and easy. Remember to read your textbook, PowerPoint's textbook lecture, and you'll be good to go. The week after we get back from spring break, which is in 2 weeks, we're going to have a midterm exam. It's going to be on the computer, which means open book, and you have all the lectures and things like that. Basically, as long as you know the vocabulary terms in the back of every one of your chapters, you're good to go. But I will do a short lecture like this, showing the textbook and showing ways to study and things like that. And that will be available on Sunday just before you go on spring break. So that's the deal. If you have any questions, email me and we'll chat. Thanks. Bye.